Hello, geometry friends. Today we're going to be talking about congruent triangles, and the idea is pretty basic and makes a lot of sense if you just pay attention. So I want you to take some good notes. Today it's not going to be all about drawings. It's going to be about looking at the orders of the parts, and you'll see that you don't always have to make a drawing or look at a drawing if you don't want to. So it's just a different way of thinking and using a different strategy to figure these out. So first of all, congruent angles have the same shape and size. This means all corresponding parts. So that means your angles and your sides are congruent. So congruent statements, when angles are congruent, we can write a congruency statement. So here's a congruency statement. And if you notice the way that these two triangles, triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF, because here's our triangle ABC, and this is our triangle DEF. And if this is already marked for you with all the corresponding tick marks and the lines to show the corresponding angles. So a valid congruency statement must match all corresponding angles and sides. So for example, angle A, the first letter, corresponds to angle D, and then angle or side AB, this side here, corresponds to side DE right there. So we can do that with every part of this, but instead let's just move on to show a different way to do that. So the next thing we're going to talk about is CPCTC. CPCTC. And what that means is that corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Okay? So that's where your So that's where the C, where you've got your C and your PCTC, corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. If we know the two triangles are congruent, then we know that each pair of corresponding parts are also congruent. So let's do an example here. List all congruent angles and sides given the congruency statements. So all we need to do here, we could draw a picture, but I want you to get used to doing this without drawing a picture and just doing it. If I know that angle J is the first one and angle P is the first one on that one, I can write that angle J is congruent to angle P. And I can say that angle K, the next one, angle K is congruent to angle Q. And that finally I can say that angle L is congruent to angle R. So notice it was just a matter of lining up my angles in order. Now, let's take a look at our sides, because we can do the same thing with our sides. So our sides, we can start with this first one, JK is congruent to PQ. So we're going to say JK is congruent to PQ. And that KL is congruent to QR. And finally, that JL is congruent to PR. Okay? So that's that one. On the next one, I want you to go ahead and try this next one. I want you to pause the video for a minute and try number 2 on your own. All right, something I forgot to mention before you check your answers is that when we do this, let's write another valid congruency statement. So if you notice, they gave you JKL is congruent to PQR. Well, we can also write something like, let's see, we can rewrite this statement. We could say triangle KJL, and notice I just rearranged the letters. Triangle KJL is congruent to triangle QPR. And all I did was I had K was in the middle, okay? So, and then I did, I did that one first, then I did J, then I did L. So then for my next one, I took Q, which was in the middle position, and I put that first, followed by P that was in the first position, and then R. So I want you to go ahead and do this next one. So hopefully if you wrote a congruency statement, there's different ones you can do, but you could have had something like YWX is congruent to angle GEF. Okay, so let's put this into practice. Let's look at problem number 3 here. On number 3, we have triangle KPM is congruent to triangle AYC. Complete each of the following statements. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead. You don't have to do this because if you know to just look and see how the letters rearrange, but if you want, you could go ahead and determine the congruency and go ahead and label it as such. So I know that angle K is congruent to angle A, and I know that angle P, I'm going to give it 2 lines. Angle P is congruent to angle Y, and I can also see that from here, from the way the letters are. And then I know the last triangle I can look at is, or the last angle is angle M. I'll give it 3 lines. Angle M is congruent to angle C. So now let's take a look at our sides, and I know that I can look at this and I know that KP, I'm going to give it one tick mark, and that is congruent to YA or AY. And if you look, there's KP and there's AY right there, okay? And I can go on and label the rest of these as I can do PM. I'll give it 2 lines, is congruent to, actually I want to give it a different color. Okay, so PM is congruent to CY, and then I can put, let's try a different color. I can do CA is congruent to MK, or I can look at AC. So either way, this one is congruent to that one. Now, I labeled it, so that makes it easy, but you could have done this exercise without labeling it. So knowing that, but now that we've labeled it, it's really easy because I can say that KM is going to be AC. And I've done CY up here. Here's CY, and I know that that corresponds to MP. And PK corresponds to YA, and so forth. Then if I do my angles, angle Y corresponds to angle P, because I already labeled that. Angle K corresponds to angle A. And finally, angle ACY corresponds to angle KMP. So So now I want to do some different congruency statements and just kind of change it up a little bit. So MPK, let's look at that. MPK, what they did here is they did the triangles backwards. So MPK corresponds to doing these ones backward as well. CYA, triangle CYA. And then I can say that YAC, they did the middle one, the first one, the last one, would correspond to PKM. Okay, there's a few more problems on this page. You can go ahead and try them on your own and check back with me to get the answers if you want. But I'm not going to do all of them. I'm just going to do some of them. So let's look at this next one. Given angle triangle GHJ is congruent to triangle XYZ. And I just want you to pause and remember that word given. When they tell us that something is given, and remember how that ends up being part of our proof, okay? Okay, so if I'm looking at this, I'm going to just look at I have an isosceles triangle. We just did isosceles triangle, so we can look at this. We know that if this is 27 feet over on this side, if this is 27 feet, then this is 27 feet over here. And because we've got our congruent sides over here, okay, like I was saying, with an isosceles triangle, we know, and we see our corresponding tick marks here, that if this side is 27, then this side is 27. And notice we have GH corresponds to XY. So I'm going to put one tick mark there. And I know that if it's isosceles, so this other one, that's also congruent. So we also know that this is going to be 27 and this is going to be 27. Additionally, we know that ZX, the base, is 18. Well, if that's the case, because this is congruent, GJ is also 18. So now we can fill this out. GJ, we already labeled it, is 18 feet. And then XY is 27 feet. And ZY is also 27 feet. So now I want to erase this. And let's look at our angles. Now, we can get some of these. We know that angle Y is 38. And we know that angle Y corresponds with angle H. So right away we can say that angle H is 38 degrees. And remember our formula to figure out the other angles in an isosceles triangle is if we take 180 degrees minus 38 degrees, and that's going to give us 142 degrees. And then we're going to divide that by 2. And that's going to give us 71 degrees. So then we know that angle Z, that these angles are all going to be 71 degrees. Okay, so angle Z is 71 degrees. Also, angle J is 71 degrees. Okay? All right, on this next one, on number 6, we have two congruent triangles again. And let's label this so that we can easily figure out what X, Y, and Z are. So from the congruency statement, we know that UV corresponds to TS. So I'm going to go UV to TS. And we can figure out that from the congruency statement that VW corresponds to SR. And finally, we know that UW, because that's taking the first one and the last one, corresponds to TR. Let's get a different color for that one. And let's give that 3 tick marks. So for this problem, we're just looking at the sides. So let's go ahead and set this up. If we need to know what x is, we know that x is for UV. If we take 12x minus 7, we know that that equals 100 and, hold on a minute. Okay. If we're looking at 12x minus 7, we know that that equals 53. 12x minus 7 is equal to 53. So now we're just going to solve. We're going to add 7 to either side. And then we have 12x is equal to 60. Then we divide, and we know that x is equal to 5. So that was easy enough to find that one. Now let's look at y. What does y equal? So here's my y, 5y minus 33, and it is on the side RS or SR, and what corresponds to that is VW. So I know that side SR is congruent to side VW. So I'm going to match up these two, and I'm going to have 5y minus 33 is equal to 57. And then I can just figure that out. Why don't you guys pause this and go ahead and figure it out. Hopefully you determined that you're going to add 33 to either side, so then you have 5y is equal to 90, and y is equal to 18. All right, now we've got our z to think about. So let's erase some of all this business here. Okay, so we're still looking at z, and where's my z here? So, okay, looking at z, we know that here is z down here, and we can write the congruency statement of UW is congruent to TR. So then we can say 3z plus 14 is equal to 50. And then we know that 3z is equal to 36. And hopefully you determine that z, of course, divided by 3 is equal to 12. Okay, on number 7, we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to do it with angles. So let's look at our congruency statements here. PHS is congruent to CNF. So right away, I know that this angle P corresponds to angle C right there. And I can go ahead and I can say that angle H, let's get a different color, angle H corresponds to angle N. And finally, I can say that S corresponds to angle F. And all I'm doing is I'm just connecting the letters. I'm just looking at the letters that are in order that way. All right, so first things first, let's figure out what X is. Well, X is, if we take 6x minus 29, because we know that, I'm doing that one because we know that angle H is congruent to, and in this case, Angle H is congruent to angle N. So I can say that it's equal to 115 degrees. And then I can go ahead and solve. 6x is equal to 144. So then x is equal to 24. Now, let's talk about y. On angle y, we don't have an angle there, but we can use our angle sum theorem and we can say, okay, I know that, let's do y last. Let's go ahead and look at z. Let's look at z. So I want to do, for z, this angle C corresponds to angle P. Angle C corresponds to angle P. I should have done a better job with the tick marks because this would have had one there. So anyway, so we've got angle C corresponds to angle P. So I can do 4z minus 32. 4z minus 32 is equal to 36 degrees. Okay? So that takes care. I want you to go ahead and solve that one. I'm going to pause it, solve it. Okay, hopefully you determined that angle Z, that Z is equal to 17. Now, our last one, how are we going to figure this out? Well, we need to do our angle sum theorem, okay? And remember, we're going to do, if we know that one angle is 115 and we know that one angle is 36 degrees, so we're going to say 180 minus 115 minus 36 is going to give us 29 degrees. So by using our angle sum theorem, we know that angle S is 29 degrees. And we also know that angle S corresponds to angle F right there. So we can do we can do 29 degrees is equal to 3y minus 1. Or we can say 3y minus 1 is equal to 29 degrees. And if you go ahead and solve that, you will find out that y is equal to 10. Okay, on this next one, I want you to focus on, there's no picture, so I kind of want you to just be able to focus on the letters and determining, just by looking at it in the order of the letters. But if you want to, you can go ahead and draw a triangle. I don't know exactly what it looks like, but if I draw it this way, I can go ahead and label it any way I want. So I'm going to go ahead and say that this is D, and this is E, and this is F right here. And then I can do the same thing over here. I can say that I have J, and K is up here, and L is down here. So then I know the way I drew this matches up to the order of the triangle there. So I can go ahead and do my markings all the way around. I can say this side is congruent to this side because that's the way I wrote it. And I can say that this side here, give it the 2 tick marks, is congruent to this side. And then DF is congruent to JL. 3 there. Okay. And I can do the same thing with my angles. I can say I know that angle D is congruent to angle J, and angle E is congruent to angle K, and angle L is congruent, that's angle F is congruent to angle L. So we can go ahead and figure it out by knowing what we need to do is we can go ahead and write congruent statements, and that's usually the very helpful way to do it. we can say that DE is congruent to JK, and that EF is congruent to KL, and that DF is congruent to JL. So now I can use this information and I can look at the information given to me. So I know that DE is 18, and I see that they've given me, let me get some different colors going here. DE is equal to 18. So 18 is congruent to, and then they told me that JK is over here. JK is equal to 3y minus 21. So now I can go ahead and solve, and I know that I can add 21 to either side and say that 39 is equal to 3y, divide by 3, so y is equal to 13. Actually, when we're solving them like this, we don't need to put the congruency statements in there. Okay, so that takes care of y. All we have to do is find x and y here. So we need to figure out what x is. Well, the information they're telling us here is, I do have a different color. Okay, make sure I get it. They're telling us that DF is 9x minus 23, and here's DF is 9x minus 23, and the other information they're telling us is that YL is equal to 7x minus 11. Well, here's my YL right here is equal to 7x minus 11. So now I can solve by subtract 7x from either side. And I'm going to have 2x, and then if I add 23 to the other side, I'm going to have 2x is equal to 12. So then x is equal to 6. And that's all I needed to do with that one. Okay, on the very last one, now we're going to have to do some other solving. So let's go ahead. Okay, this next one, let's try and do this without drawing a picture. So let's look at what they gave us. They gave us QRS is congruent to MNP. QR is equal to 11. And what else do we need to figure out? We're looking for, okay, let's circle up. We need to find we know that MP is equal to 2x plus 1, okay? So let's see if we have the information we need. MP, we know that MP is congruent to QS. So do we have a QS here? Yes, we do. Right here, they give us QS. So we can then say MP is equal to 2x plus 1, and MP is congruent to QS. So we can go ahead and substitute that in, and we can say that MP, 2x plus 1, is equal to 15, because we have that information. And if we solve that, we will find out that x is equal to 7. Now, sometimes in these problems, they give you extra information that maybe you don't need, okay? So let's look at another one. We also have to find the value of angle y. So what do we know about angle y? Angle y, the measure of angle y, I'm sorry, not the measure of angle M is equal to 17y minus 4. Well, what is M congruent to? M is congruent to, okay, so now we're trying to figure out what angle, we need to find angle M. We need to find out what y is. And we know that angle M is equal to 17y minus 4. So what is angle M? Well, the issue is they didn't tell us angle M, but they did give us angle S and angle R. So now this is where you've got to think outside the box or think outside the triangle and think, okay, what is my, let's use my angle sum theorem. And I know that 180 degrees minus 84 minus 32 tells me that it's 64 degrees. So I know that angle M is equal to 64 degrees. So okay, we know that angle Q is congruent to angle M, and we know that angle R is congruent to angle N, and we know that angle S is congruent to angle P. So we need to figure out angle M is equal to 17y minus 4. And that is equal to angle M. Now, angle M is angle Q. Well, they didn't give us an angle Q. They told us that angle S was 84 degrees, which means that that's congruent to angle P, which means that this is equal to 84. And we have 32 degrees is what these two equal 32 degrees. And these two equal 84 degrees each. So we're going to use our angle sum theorem. And we know that 180 degrees minus 84 minus 32 is going to give us 64 degrees. And if we know that it's 64 degrees, that is the value of 64 degrees is what these two angles are. So angle M is 64 degrees. Now we can use it to figure out what y is. So we're going to say 17y minus 4 is equal to 64 degrees. If we add 4 to either side, we're going to have 17y is equal to 68. And then if we divide by 17, we know that y is equal to 4. Okay, so I hope that you watched this all the way through and took some notes. And we'll see you tomorrow and we'll do some practicing together.